This is Now We're Here. I'm Damon Lester. Today, I'm talking with Vinay Shahani, Senior Vice President of U.S. Marketing and Sales for Nissan Americas. Hey, Vinay, thank you for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it.
Damon, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here with you today.
Yeah, I know we both got a lot going on and our plates are full. And I just wanted to just thank you for just taking the time. I know you're really busy running around and handling all of the business within Nissan, but I really appreciate it. So, but let's get to it. Let's get to it.
Well, it's my honor to be running around and to be linked up with this brand is just fantastic. So it's my honor, my pleasure.
Thank you. So let's start, Vinay. Let's start off from where are you from? Talk about your humble beginnings and what was your path to growth into to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think kind of our upbringing is always a important, let's say, North Star for most people. So my story begins with my parents who immigrated to the United States in the 1960s from India. And my dad got a job at Ford Motor Company. And so he moved to Michigan, and that's where I was born and raised. And I think you probably understand this, but growing up in the 70s and 80s in Michigan, and still to this day, I would imagine, although I haven't lived in Michigan recently, car culture it's just everything, and growing up in Michigan, it's like you were either a Ford family or a General Motors family or a Chrysler family back in the day. Yep. My dad was a Ford guy. He worked there his entire career. Ford was all I knew for the first, let's say, 22 years of my life. I actually was very inspired by my dad's career. I believe that is what gave me the car bug at a very early age. I was counting the other day, but I think I've been to probably 41 or 42 Detroit auto shows in my life. And it started with my dad taking me when I was a really young kid. And I just fell in love with the industry. I fell in love with the product. That was my thing. I loved cars. I loved everything about the industry. And I made it my objective while I was in high school was to get into a mechanical engineering program. I was very lucky that the University of Michigan was in my backyard. It was a good engineering program, and I was fortunate to get in.
That's Go
and
Blue.
That was Go Blue. That's right. Go Blue. And that was the start of it. I actually interned at Ford Motor Company while I was in college. Had an opportunity to go back and work there full time. I chose not to. I actually went into a career in consulting, but related to the automotive business. The company that I was working for was Arthur Andersen, and they actually decided to send me back to school full time to get my MBA while I was working there. And that's when I went to grad school, and I first learned about Nissan and the turnaround of Nissan back in the late 90s while I was in grad school. And I remember it was 2002. Carlos Ghosn came to Stanford Business School, spoke to my class. And at that point, Damon, I was like, I'm going to go work for Nissan. It was such an exciting brand. You probably remember, had just launched the Z car. Yep. Xterra had been in market. I mean, it's just an exciting time for Nissan. And that's really what drew me in. Post business school was getting a role, a leadership role at Nissan.
So you got a bit of the auto bug in Detroit. Mm-hmm. So back then, when those auto shows were in January, so it was always cold as hell.
Always cold, but also brilliant. If you think about it, like no one's going to come to Michigan in January, but they created a reason for people to come to Michigan in January. And the auto show had a life of its own. I mean, it created this environment, this ecosystem of supporting businesses, whether it's the hotels, the restaurants, all of the infrastructure for the show itself. It was a big generator of economic progress in the city of Detroit.
They started the star power at Detroit Auto Show. That was really where all of the bringing the stars with the cars back then. It all started with the Detroit Auto Show in January. with the gala, which was, it always ended with the black tie gala, which was a big
Black
thing.
tie.
And I think now I haven't been to that auto show probably since right before COVID. They changed the
Yeah.
format now, but I know that you're right. It was always, you dreaded it because it was cold, if since you were flying in, because you would just want to run from, you stayed at the Marriott Renson down downtown, and you always want to run all the way to to the convention center and not go out the rest of the day. But that vibe back then was, that was nothing like it, because you had access to everyone. Everyone stayed there because that was the premier show back then. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was larger than life, and you didn't have to be a car enthusiast to like get wrapped into what was there. I mean, like you said, it was the confluence of the product, the brands, the stars, all of the glitzy side of the automotive industry was so much on display at the Detroit Auto Show back in the day. You're right, the format has changed. I think auto shows in general have changed dramatically since back then. But like everything, there's always change, and the evolution is hitting a lot of the aspects of the business, including auto shows.
Yeah. So you went to business in Stanford, right?
That's
Stanford.
right. Yeah.
Okay. And so you, from Stanford, then went to work for Nissan.
Yeah, I joined Nissan in early 2004. I was very fortunate to join the company at a time where they were looking for kind of building their bench of cross-functional leaders within the company. And what I mean by that was the expectation when I interviewed and hired in with the company was that, Vinay, we want you to start in one area of the business, but we want to rotate you through other functions within the business. And I can tell you honestly, Damon, at that point in my life, my passion was to go work in marketing, and I wanted to go into marketing. And I remember the HR team was like, "Well, we know you want to go into marketing, but we have somewhere where we want you to go first, and that's to go work in the assembly plant in Smyrna, Tennessee." And I was up for it. I had an engineering background. I was very optimistic about what I could learn from working in a manufacturing environment, because most of my career so far has been in let's say, a desk job type of environment. Whereas when they brought me in, my responsibility was to be the department manager for engineering for the Xterra, the Frontier, and the Pathfinder
Wow.
on the body engineering side. So this was where all the body sheet metal came together to form the shell of the vehicle before it went into the paint shop. And so that was a tremendous learning opportunity. I did that for probably about a year or so. And then they gave me an opportunity to go to the other side of the plant, which we call trim and chassis, where I had responsibility for Nissan's flagship sedan, the Maxima.
Wow.
And I'm a product of the 90s, where
That's
you
when the
know
Maxima,
Mac.
right? Didn't then the Maxima?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had a manual transmission in the Maxima. I mean, it was a cool car, and to be able to be a part of that legacy, to be responsible for trim and chassis engineering for Maxima was a great honor for me. So yeah, it was a couple years in the plan, and then they asked me to move to headquarters, which at the time was in Gardena, California. So packed up and moved to California, and then it was a series of rotations. Working for Ghosn as his technical assistant, moving to the after sales and launching the Nismo brand in the United States. Moving into brand management, where I was looking over all of the trucks, SUVs, and crossovers. Moving out into the field. So I came down to the central region based in Dallas, where I was the area general manager for the Dallas area office. Then went back into headquarters and was responsible for marketing, communications, and media. So that was kind of like my 10-year stint at Nissan.
So you did grassroots, so you learned the in and outs, and then you were able to use all of that knowledge, and as kind of like you did a rotational, and,
Hmm.
and was able to, you pivoted very well, man, and all of that experience and all of that base of what the foundation of Detroit is look at you now as VP. And so I commend you and congratulate you. You did mention a company, Arthur Andersen, and I'm from Philly, went to Temple, and I was a part of the internship program called Inroads.
Okay.
And Inroads, um, I applied for to work for Andersen. I was an accounting major.
Okay.
They flew you out to Chicago. That's where they had their training or something like that, right?
Yep. St. Charles, Illinois. That's exactly right.
And that was like the best time that I ever had because Andersen back then was just key on training, 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 and then you were able to go back to your home area and go work in that respective office. But that's a good foundation that you had because that training that they had was second to none, second to none.
It really was, Damon. I mean, you're bringing up some really positive memories that I have, but some of the people that I worked for at Anderson, I like to say, got me started with the right foot forward in the sense of professionalism, in the sense of learning how to communicate effectively, in terms of how to become confident in presenting information in a compelling and impactful way, how to analyze data. I mean, these were things that they don't always come naturally, but when you're in an environment as structured as Arthur Andersen was, and the sister organization, which was later named Accenture, started out as Andersen Consulting, became Accenture. But those environments, they impart you with these really you use the word foundational. That's exactly the right word. Foundational skill set that really helped you in your career in the future. So I was very, very grateful to have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I remember the people were just very nice and down to earth. And but they prepared you to be able to present. That was like one of the biggest meat and potatoes that they did for from what I recall was you had to be able to present. And outside of knowing numbers and they were the technology, they were leading in technology because back then we used to write on 14 column paper. But that's when Lotus Notes and everything came out. I'm aging myself now, but that was like that was like the thing back then to be able to have a laptop that was like big as hell. And he's like, oh, this is Lotus Notes. I got to be able to use that. But Andersen, that all started with Andersen in accounting on the accounting
Yeah,
side.
yeah,
That's cool. And so
yeah,
now you are running Nissan, and I would say, I had the opportunity to meet with you at NAMAD this year, and it was the story that you gave the path to success for Nissan under what your vision is and what your toolage is, what you're planning on doing is awesome. I've said this in a couple other public entities, public forums. We get a bad rap all the daggone time, and sometimes it overbears what all of the good stuff that we do. And from the level of the dealer's side, from the OEM side, is that everyone at the corporate level and everyone that I've ever had opportunity to meet, either currently or back then when Jed Conley was running Nissan, those everyone was very grassroots, roll up your sleeve and work, but we're very personable. And I would say I would ask like what for people to understand that journey that you've gone through starting in Detroit and now really you cut your tooth in the industry with Nissan and now running the company. What's your vision for the company under your leadership?
yeah. I have to pause and acknowledge some of the people you just mentioned because I would be remiss if I didn't. Jed Connolly is just a prince of a man. I'm still in touch with him to this day.
Oh, well, tell
Um,
him I said hello,
I
please.
will. I will. So Jed Connolly, Mark McNabb, uh, Brian Carolyn, Brad Bradshaw. These are people. Al Castanetti.
Yep.
These were influential people in my professional upbringing. Yes, I worked for Arthur Andersen. Yes, I came and worked at Nissan. And I learned from these people. But I think we as leaders and just people in general, we are a product of the way we're shaped in our career. And I was shaped by these people. And I would even say, even after I left Nissan in 2013, I went to Volkswagen. I worked for McNabb again when I was at Volkswagen, went to Toyota and had almost 7.5 wonderful years at Toyota and Lexus, where I learned a lot from the people around me. I think what really attracted me back to Nissan was, first of all, Jeremy Papin, who's the chairman of the Americas. He's the one who reached out to me, along with a guy named Anish Bajal, who is one of the leaders in human resources. And they were telling me what was going on with Nissan. And I always have a special place in my heart for Nissan. And my gut feel was exactly what you said. The brand doesn't get enough credit. You know, when you really look at the range of models in the portfolio, starting with the Versa, which is, you know, less than $20,000, moving up to the all new Kicks, which has a starting at MSRP of less than $22,000, moving to the Rogue, moving to the Pathfinder, moving to the Armada, moving to the Murano that's coming in a few months. You know, we have this, and the Frontier pickup truck. I mean, we have this full lineup of fantastic products, many of which are made in the North American region. And unfortunately, the brand doesn't get enough credit for it. Unfortunately, you look at the purchase funnel, and I don't think awareness is a problem. People know of the Nissan brand, but there is a familiarity problem with the brand. People just aren't familiar with the lineup. And I think the other opportunity that I see is not only familiarization of the lineup, but who are we as a brand?
Right.
What do we stand for? We stand for exciting products. We stand for a level of quality, durability, and reliability that you would expect from a Japanese company. Um, Again, full lineup of vehicles. And I think we as a company have to do a better job of telling that story, because I think that's key to unlocking the potential for the brand in the future, where we can do a better job of inviting more people into the Nissan family. And until we do a better job of overcoming some of that familiarity gap, and quite honestly, overcoming some of the problems that we've had in the past with, you know, as an example, continuously variable transmissions. The first round of those weren't very good. We had some problems with that. Well, those problems have been since fixed, but there's a bit of a hangover effect associated with word of mouth, associated with what people experienced when they were part of the brand back then. And I think that's part of the story that we need to tell.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we have to do it. Be the voice for the company and the brand too, as dealers. And and to your point, it's up to us to help you help us, and vice versa, right? And so and so the brand is really an everybody's car.
It really is.
For
That's a great
everything
way
that
to put it.
everything that you just mentioned, from the price point to the trim levels that we have, all the way up to a pickup truck, we are everybody's car. And
Hmm.
and we have to toot that horn, right?
I love that.
And that horn is something that you're the executive car, you're the sole proprietor contractor car, you're the government worker car, you're the guy that worked the lady that works at the Raising Cane's car. It's an everyday vehicle for whomever level or professional level profession that you're in. It is everyone's car, and we do need to help bring that to fruition and bring that light, because a healthy OEM, healthy dealer body, healthy OEM, and those things that we all go locked in arms. Right, we are locked like this, not like this, right? And so it
100%.
we have to do a better job, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because the cars are sexy too,
They are sexy. I mean,
right?
but look at the styling on some of these cars. And the Z car is another great example. You and I haven't talked about it yet, but the Z is an iconic sports car. You know, a lot of people don't know that the Z competes in the Pirelli GT4 America series. I mean, it is one of the most competent sports cars in that series, and that's one of the things that struck me when I got back to the company earlier this year. We're competing fairly successfully in the series, but we weren't talking about it enough. And that's something that the social media team has taken advantage of to really kind of show people who may not be aware that, yeah, not only do we make this fantastic, iconic sports car that's available in a manual transmission, which is hard to find these days,
Yep.
but it's also competing and winning races in a very competitive series. It's stories like that that appeal to not only the people that you just mentioned, the sole proprietor, the contractor, the professional, but also the car enthusiasts. And I think that's really important to embrace those people, because the car enthusiasts tend to be the people that friend circles go to get advice.
Mhm.
Hey, what car should I think about? Well, have you thought about this car? Have you thought about this car? And I think, making sure that we have a marketing approach which is omni-channel, that reaches all these different segments of people that are in the car buying population, but to impart upon them the importance of the fact that Nissan has a full lineup of vehicles across all these different segments. It's our collective job. And I will say without any hesitation that it has to be a two-way street between us and our dealers. You dealers are the face of the brand to the consumer. The manufacturer, the OEM, can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, but ultimately you're the face of the brand to the consumer, and you're doing a fantastic job. I mean, just the other day, I don't know if you heard about this. The embargo was lifted yesterday, but Nissan was the number one mainstream brand in the JD Power Sales Satisfaction Index. That's a tremendous testament to the fantastic dealers that we have that day in and day out do one thing in a stellar way, which is putting the customer first.
That's right.
And that's kind of the kind of news that we have to really sort of get the word out, because there's so much to offer with the Nissan lineup, and with this tremendous network of dealers that we have. There's a lot of great customer satisfaction that comes from that.
And and I guess we have to figure out how do we stay that as part of the message, which drown out the negative stuff, right? And the industry right now, everyone's have some issues. There's not an OEM or manufacturer here that does not have an issue that takes place, but we tend to have things that are highlighted more on the negative than what you just pointed out. And so I think we just need to figure out, or the company and our dealer body, respective dealer body, have to figure out the message of carrying in that positivity going forward. And it is social, but a lot of it's going to be grassroots, right? And so I think everyday car, everyday people, everyday message, and those three things, I think, may be part of what the new version of the secret of success needs to be for carrying our positivity going. So for you, I know you have a tasking job, and it's stressful. Being a dealer is stressful too. And how do you find that balance? Because I know that you have Jeremy, you have Judy Wheeler, you have a whole bunch of great people around you, but you also are a human being. And sometimes they think those capes always have to stay on, and
Yeah.
that's the problem. There's a human side to being an owner, there's a human side to being an executive, there's a human side to being anything, that we tend to forget that at the end of the day that you go home to families. How do you keep that balance, and what are some of the things that you do to try to find that balance?
Yeah, Damon, you bring up a great point. First of all of those people you mentioned, I'm so blessed to have the leadership team that supports me and surrounds me, including some of the people you mentioned, as well as Jeremy. This company is filled with smart people who care. They care about the brand. They care about each other. We have this saying in the company, which is something that I'm glad is more loudly embraced than what it was before, which is heart over mind. Obviously, heart is everything. Like being empathetic, being a supportive partner, leader within the organization, being a servant leader within the organization is something that I think many of our leaders take very, very straight to their heart. But you're right. Ultimately, in your deathbed, you got one thing that you can rely on, and that's your family. And ultimately, I truly believe in family first. You're right. My job is pretty busy. I mean, I'm probably traveling every week, whether it's to important meetings that we're having internally or going to see dealers in different parts of the country. And for that reason, since I'm gone a lot, I have two kids, an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. I'm very happily married for almost 20 years. Like, that's my energy source. Like, these three people are the center of my universe. And that's why I have no hobbies. When I'm home on the weekends, it's time with my family. That's what I prioritize. I do the best I can during the week, but a lot of times working for Japanese companies, you have late night conference calls, you have early morning conference calls. I think it's about finding a balance that works for you. I think fortunately we have a very flexible work environment where people understand, there may be a 6 a.m. meeting and a 12 a.m. meeting in the same day. And you're going to have to work your calendar on no one's there to go manage your calendar for you, but you got to get shit done. And that's how we all operate. We work hard and we play hard. But for me, on the weekends, yes, of course, Nissan business, sometimes will pop up on the weekends. But I'm really about prioritizing my family, spending time with them. I'm very fortunate my parents are still around. They live nearby us as well. So I'm very blessed in that regard, and that's what keeps me grounded.
I got two more questions for you. One is a policy question, right? So the state of Maryland, we're a ZEV state, and we are trying to lobby our governor to give us an extension on that. And how do you see going forward? EV, hybrid, ICE. Is there an appropriate mix? Do you think one needs to be more prominent than the other? What are you seeing from an industry standpoint, and also whatever you can share with the brand?
Yeah, it's a really great question, a very pertinent question in light of all of the focus that's been on powertrain diversity. Look, I don't think there's any question that eventually electric vehicles will be the prominent form of propulsion for vehicles. The question is, how big is it going to get? And I think that's a function of legislation, as you've rightly pointed out, but it's also a function of cost and scale. And until we can get the energy density in a battery to be cost effective, but also provide a sufficient range, I think you're going to continue to struggle with people who look at it and say, I'm going to worry about range anxiety, and this may not work for me. And the second part to my answer to your question is, when you look at the United States, it's a huge country. It's almost like a collection of countries in the sense of the things that are prevalent in a different part of the USA. And what I mean by that is, ultimately, where a customer wants to go is going to be dependent upon their circumstances that surround their life. Do they live in a urban environment? Do they live in a suburban environment? Do they live in a rural environment? And what is their access to charging infrastructure, which, as we all know, is not fully built out in certain parts of the country? So I think it comes down to one very simple thing, which is the needs assessment, which you do day in and day out when an up walks into the store. You got to ask the question, hey, tell me about your life. Tell me about your needs. And ultimately, you're going to hear a variety of answers to that question, because one size fits all is not going to work for this country, because we have so many different people that have so many different circumstances. And I think ultimately, we as car companies and dealers need to be working together along with our local and national government to offer choice in terms of model diversity that we've already talked about, but in terms of powertrain diversity and having efficient internal combustion engine vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and battery electric vehicles. I think you're going to see the mix will continue to shift depending on the circumstances, whether the which administration is in power and what sort of legislation they're able to pass. But ultimately, you're going to see a diversity of powertrain options that each manufacturer is going to come to the table with, because ultimately the consumer should be in control of what they choose to drive.
So true. So true. As we wrap up, what's the message can you carry to your Nissan dealers, and what message would you give to all of your employees here and abroad to your Nissan folks?
Yeah, look, I mean, to our dealer partners, I would just say, first and foremost, thank you for all that you do. I mean, we have a fantastic network. And again, they do yeoman's work in terms of delighting the customer day in and day out. And I would just say, keep your foot on the gas, keep doing that, keep doing what you're good at. Um, we have a lot of things in store in the Nissan brand in terms of new products, new technologies, new powertrains that are under development. We just talked about the fact that, we're accelerating some of our plans to deploy a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle next year with the Rogue. We're trying to pull ahead the timeline associated with the e-power technology, which is our version of hybrid that's done very well in other parts of the world, that will do very well in driving sales here in the United States. We've got the product and the technology coming. Let's work together to find ways to improve throughput, to improve dealer return on sales. I think it's all about communication and having a very open dialogue between the factory and the dealer partners. That's the first answer I would tell you. The second answer, speaking internally, I think we have a lot of hardworking people, and I would remind everybody at Nissan, yes, of course, we have to develop products for the end consumer, but the biggest consumer of our vehicles, is Nissan dealers. They're our customer too. And we have to have this retail mindset that guides everything that we do with respect to the programs that we offer and making sure that they're simple and easy to understand. Everything we do should be aimed towards making the dealers' lives a lot easier in terms of how they serve their customer. And I believe we can do this. This is not rocket science. We've done it well before, and I'm very optimistic that we can get the brand to where it needs to be, where we can be as inclusive as possible, bringing as many people into the Nissan family as we can.
Man, awesome. And Vinay, I'm going to give some shout outs to some other folks. Shout out to Arcangelo in Japan, Will Jones. Thank you for helping me set this up. And hey, as one of your dealers, it's a pleasure to work with you and work with everyone that I mentioned and historically I've known in the past. We're no different than any other brand. And we, at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Customer matter, right? And as you just well put that in. So, we got your back. I got your back. Anything you need from us or me, please know, just put up the bat signal and I'm there. But thank you.
I know it and I feel it. And thank you. The feeling is mutual.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Now We're Here. Make sure you follow the show and share this episode with a friend. Stay tuned for more episodes as we shine spotlights on the leaders who are not just keeping up with the industry, but driving it forward.